Hello, everyone joining us in person and joining us online. Welcome to our first sidetrack session of the day, where you can discover how to make your products truly shine in any theme with themable products, with theming parameters and modern CSS. We have a fantastic panel of speakers joining us today who are all passionate about helping you create themable products. First, we have Andreas Rüssler, a seasoned SAP developer focused on UI technologies, and who I've just learned is a professional beatboxer as well. You can ask him about that later. We also have Barbara Hartel joining us in the back, a product owner and development expert for the UI theme designer. We have David Klug, a dedicated developer also from the UI theme designer team, and Dominik Schreiber, a software architect and SAP's UI theme designer team. Please give them a warm welcome.
So hello again from my side. We have a great topic today, which is called theming and themable products. And the topic is often overlooked, but I bet everybody of you have seen great software and you thought, wow, the developers put so much effort into it that the colors fit the corporate branding. And today we show you that it's not that hard and can be quite easy. Let's have a short look about the agenda. First, I will tell you something why theming matters, and everybody should invest some minutes in theming. Then Andreas will take over and show you how it was done and still could be done. And then Dominik show you how to use CSS custom properties and some modern CSS hacks. And then in the end, we give a short outlook what could be next in your projects. So let's start with the why. So why does theming matters? Let's come up with an example. Let's think about people like us, like you, like everyone. We wear different clothes to express ourselves, fit in situations, and just be individuals. And software is individual too. Some of us wear suits and ties, others wear hoodies and sneakers, and not because one is better than the other. It just fits the context, the situations, or the use case we want to express us. And we should do the same with our software. And for that, SAP already comes up with 4 different theme flavors across our theme families. We have a light theme, a dark theme, a high contrast white theme, and a high contrast black theme. And on top of that, you can build your own custom themes. And the good thing is, these 4 themes already come out of the box shipped by SAP. But here's the imagination and some examples how your custom theme could look like. All 4 very different and easy to build on top of these 4 base themes provided by SAP. And now you still think it is a lot of work I have to put into it to come there. And you're right if you're doing it the wrong way. In this short example, we just want to theme the home button across the 4 theme flavors. And normally, the first idea is to come up with 4 CSS files and duplicate the CSS rules 4 times to reflect the color and the border values. And that's quite a lot of work. In a more modern way, we only have 1 CSS file and use variables for color and borders. And then the theme flavors will do the work for that. But this is just a sneak preview, and now Andreas and Dominik will show you how it is done and could be done in a more modern way.
Hello, everybody. I'm continuing the warm-up before Dominik starts with the real stuff. So how it's currently done, or how you can deal with theming, the options. So you can just ignore theming, of course, and say, okay, it's a black text on my home menu, and this will work maybe. But with the upcoming light dark, automatic switches and so on, you end up with controls which may not work because an automatic switch switches the background to dark, and that's it. So it's maybe not a good idea to not deal with theming in UI5. So there's a quite common approach in the community to do theming in the renderer. Here in the home button or home menu, you can deal with the parameters API, and there you simply can get the values of the colors you requesting for that. You have the complete degree of freedom. You have control structures, can calculate the colors and put it in a style. But when diving a little bit deeper into that approach, you may have a conflict with latency, because when you render, it's often done in the bootstrap. And the parameters API, when you request the parameter values, is diving into the maybe loaded CSS file, and there is a data URI where a parameters JSON is encoded. Maybe I do not know, but maybe already UI5 also requests the custom CSS properties, but it's still in the CSS. And when the CSS is not loaded, and this is synchronous code, synchronous requests have to be done. So there are synchronous fetch requests, which are a disaster somehow. We are often from the theming team deal with that request, especially when there are cross-domain requests. Then we need to deal with credentials which have to fetch. When there are proxies on customer sites, it's getting a mess. So there is another recommended thing to do. So you can use less CSS. It's a CSS language extension, and you have all the cool calculation stuff in it. You can have lighten colors, darken colors. You can have some kind of control structures with mix-ins, and then you can compile the theme with the parameters exposed by UI5, the shell color, the text color, and so on, and at least your SAP theme is calculated and deployed with your application. But the problem is that this does unfortunately not work with custom theming, because when there's an unknown custom theme with unknown values, this is not persisted as a static resource in your application or in your library, control library. When it comes to custom theming, we have infrastructure established for on-premise and so on. Here you see an infrastructure. Don't be scared. I do not dive deeper. We have an architecture with microservices, with resilience patterns, with security, and so on. We host them on almost 40 landscapes on our BTP, Cloud Foundry, and others. And this is a quite huge effort, but with the new technologies introduced in the browser, for instance, as CSS custom properties, which are the parameters, or relative colors of the OCLAP color space, and control structures with the container queries. We have everything in place to replace that, what we currently do. So we make ourselves redundant to switch to the newest technology. So I give over to Dominic.
Thank you. I have. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So good morning also from my side. I want to show you how you can use modern CSS features to do everything Andreas just showed without having a build step for CSS and also without executing JavaScript. Because since UI5 127, UI5 already includes all theming parameters as CSS custom properties in the library CSS of the core library. So you can see it also on ui5.sap.com. There are all parameters directly available, and 99% of the time, it's enough for you as the application or control developer to just use what's already there. Also, CSS is now almost Turing complete, and you can perform things we previously needed a compiler for directly in the browser with equidistant color spaces, with relative colors, You can replace functions like lighten or darken. And also with container-style queries, you can write conditional CSS that applies only if a custom property or a variable has a certain value. Which is nice unless you're targeting Firefox, because in Firefox there is a bug, but they are working on it, just so you know, disclaimer. And what I want to do now with you is demo that. Let's first look at UI5 themselves and how their controls are using CSS custom properties. And then we will look together at a control I developed, a flower. And we will see how we can turn that from hard-coded colors and behaviors to something that is themable directly in the browser. So here we are. Here's the UI5 demo kit. And let me inspect this link here. That's a link, and it's definitely a blue color, but actually it's not blue. It's SAP link color, and SAP link color is blue. The nice thing is, if I were to change SAP link color somewhere, for example here, then it's no longer blue. It's coffee, because I like coffee. And this is what is already in controls of the M library, and as Fabian told me, also in the F library and some others. And you can use that in your controls as well. And that's what we're going to do now. You see this awesome flower. I have tabs open for the different flavors of the horizon family. So this is morning horizon, and let me quickly switch to evening horizon and to high contrast black and high contrast white. The flower is the same in all flavors, and you may have already seen that the contrast is not ideal, especially in dark themes. So that's one thing we will look at. I will jump into code, and you can see my control here. It's the flower control. It has a short renderer that just creates a div with the class flower and 5 divs inside with the class flower petal. And the last petal has the text UI5 icon. And because of DOM layering, the last is actually the first. If we switch back here, this is the last. And I already have CSS for that. That hard codes the background colors, hard codes the border colors, hard codes in opacity. And the first thing I want to address with you is the opacity, because in high contrast themes, this does not have the contrast we would like to achieve. In high contrast themes, we would like to achieve a contrast of 7.5 to 1. This is not what we have here. So we will write CSS that switches the opacity directly in the browser. For that, we would introduce here a parameter, a CSS custom property, and we would call it petal opacity. And on the root, we would give it a value. And not 0.8 as Copilot thinks, but 1, because 1 would be more accessible, and we would like to be accessible by default. So now we no longer have the opacity here, which is great, because it's high contrast black. But also we do not have opacity here, which is bad because it doesn't look that nice. There is a technique called container-style queries that lets you write CSS just for a specific property, if a property has a certain value. And we can make use of that because we have a special property called SAP theme ID that has the name of the SAP theme that's currently running. And it looks like that: container style SAP theme ID, SAP horizon. And we do not want it on the root, we want it on the body. And then we want it to be 0.8. Now, what does this actually do? It looks for body elements in a containment context where the custom property SAP theme ID has the value SAP horizon. You can create your own containment contexts with the container type property, but there are already two containment contexts existing, the body and the HTML element around it. And because every element we would ever inject into the DOM is injected into the body, it's enough if we change the petal opacity inside the body. Let me save and have a look. And now we have an opacity here. And for comparison with high contrast black, we do not have an opacity here, which is what we wanted. Thank you. We have no opacity in high contrast or in evening horizon because we did not address that yet. Let me quickly do that. So I'll copy this statement and write dark here. And now we have it. That's a good first or second step. The next thing would be that I hard-coded all those colors, which is not nice. It's the purple brand color from the UI5Con, but actually we would rather use the SAP selected color instead because SAP selected color matches the theme and has enough contrast against all backgrounds. And as I showed you in the beginning, there's SAP selected color as a parameter, and we can make use of that. So let's introduce custom properties for the background colors. And we will name them petal x background. And now I have to put in numbers here, and I will reverse the numbers of the end of type because of the DOM layering, so that petal 1 is the topmost. And now I simply have to give values. Copilot wants to hard code those values. But we would rather give them a different value, SAP selected color. And we would default it to 007270 F2, because that's the brand color in morning horizon. And actually, we would not want to use the SAP selected color for all backgrounds. We would just use it for the first, and then map the previous background to the next background. Because then, if we change one, we change all. Like this. And if I move back, then everything is broken. Why is that? Dashes. There are too many dashes. Thank you. Now it's better. Okay, and we just did that. Let me quickly look in morning horizon. There it's as well, and in the high contrast themes as well. Unfortunately, we just did that for the background color, and we would have to do it for the border color as well. So let's pick those and use them here and call them border color instead. And then we introduce borders that are the backgrounds, dashes. So that's a start. And now we have completely blue petals because the borders are the backgrounds. So maybe instead of the backgrounds, we use something else. We could use the SAP text color because that has a good contrast against everything and it works well here. And later we will use something else, which I will come to in a minute. Works in all themes. Let's build this gradient that I had in the beginning, where the first petal is the lightest and then they get darker in light themes and lighter in dark themes. For that, we will have to look at the different SAP theme IDs again, because SAP Horizon is light and SAP Horizon Dark is dark. And we will change the Petal 1 background. No, we will not change the Petal 1 background, we will just change the Petal 2 background. Because Petal 1 background can stay. Copilot has interesting ideas. Background. And we do not actually want Petal 1 background, we would like to have Petal 1 background darkened by 10%. Now we can use relative colors in an equidistant color space. And this equidistant color space is called OKLCH. LCH stands for lightness, chroma, and hue. And OK is because that's the second version. There's also an LCH namespace that is not equidistant. OK means it's equidistant, which is nice. And then we can say not just var, but from var. And we get 3 parameters out of that, called L, C, and H, because that's the 3 channels OKLCH is using. And if I would just leave it like that, it would be just the same color. It has the same lightness, the same chroma, and the same hue. But we will want to darken the lightness, and now we can use a calculation here. We can say calc from this lightness minus 0.1, 10%. And this already makes the Petal 1 background 10% darker. Let's do that for the others as well. And let's do that for the border colors as well. What happened? 1 is enough. Petal 1 border color is Petal 1 background. And we would not like to darken it by 10%, but by 20, because we like 20. And now if we look at Morning Horizon, all petals have become a little bit darker, one after the other. And that's just in CSS. I can show you that if I change the SAP selected color somewhere to coffee, the whole flower changes. Without a build step, without JavaScript. That's a good start. Let's do something similar for Evening Horizon, but not with a darken. Instead, we do it with a lighten. So we would not subtract, but add. And out of sudden, this works for Evening Horizon as well. For the demo, we keep our fingers from the high contrast themes, because the more contrast, the better. For that, we will just leave it like that. What does not look nice at the moment is this text, UI5con. It's almost unreadable. It does not have the necessary contrast. It does have the right contrast if I change the selected color, but I wanted to work with every background. What that means is I have to create something like a contrast statement directly in CSS. And either we can wait for the next 2 or 3 years until the browsers implement the color contrast function, or we can use relative colors and container style queries to build that ourselves. Let's start. Instead of hard-coded white here, we would use a parameter, Petal 1 contrast color. And for completeness, we would have to do that for the other petals as well. But from the renderer, they don't have text in them, and it's a lot of work, so we will just keep it like that for now. And we could create a Petal 1 contrast color, which is based on the Petal 1 background. And again, it's a relative color, OKLCH from var. And we want to have a color that's either completely black or completely white, based on the lightness of the background. That means we want to have some something to do with the lightness and completely zero chroma, zero hue. What do we do with the lightness? There's a complete article from Lea Veroux. I highly recommend that you read it because it's awesome. For the sake of time, it's a bit of magic. We use a clamp function to clamp a value between 0 and 1. And then we divide the lightness by 0.2623, subtract 1, and multiply with minus infinity. And if we do that, we get either black or white based on the lightness of the petal 1 background. And we can already see it in action. Now it's white, now it's black. That's also nice. That also works in all themes. Now we have black here, we have white here, black here, and black here, and white here. That's great. That's good for accessibility, but we can do even better because we have two colors, SAP text color and SAP content contrast text color, that are meant to be used instead of black and white. And at least in the low contrast themes, it would make sense to use them. In the high contrast themes, black and white is the best we could come up with. So at least for the demo, we will stay with black and white for high contrast. For low contrast, we will have to work a bit. Because what we can do now is we can inspect the value of the contrast color with a container style query like we did with the SAP theme ID before. And we would like to say container style petal 1 contrast color is black. So if it is black, we would like to say that the petal 1 text color, which does not yet exist, is SAP text color. There are a bunch of problems. The first is, on which element do we do that? Because a container style query does only work for elements that are inside a containment context. And the petal 1 contrast color depends on the background, and the background depends on the theme. So is only defined in the body. So that means we have to find an element that is inside the body where we can change the petal 1 text color. Luckily, there is such an element in our index.html. It's the div for the component support. Every element that we could possibly render somewhere is inside this div. So we can target that and say divs with the data ID container get a petal 1 text color of SAP text color. Petal 1 text color is not yet used. We currently use contrast color. Let's quickly change that. Petal 1 text color, and we also have to give it a value here. Petal 1 text color, default to petal 1 contrast color. That's great. And while we're at it, we can also use the petal 1 text color for the border color, because that has the most contrast. We are making it work in every theme. Next problem. Black is not black. Here we create an OKLCH black with 0, 0, 0 lightness, chroma, and hue. And black is not the same. So we will use OKLCH 0, 0, 0 instead. Next problem. CSS does not yet know that contrast color is a color. From everything CSS knows, this could be anything. There could be a string in there. So at the moment, it literally has this as the value, which is not what we want. So we have to tell CSS that the contrast color is a color. Luckily, we can do that with a property. And Copilot already knows. It needs to have the syntax color. I would rather have it inherit. That means if I change the contrast color on one element, it's also changed for all elements inside. And for the initial value, we can pick anything. I like to pick red because it's the shortest color you could come up with. And now, at least this container style query would work. But, last problem, SAP text color is dark only in light themes. In dark themes, SAP text color is light. So we have to extend our container style query with a query for the theme ID. Style SAP theme ID, SAP Horizon, now he knows. And if it's not black but white, then it should be SAP content contrast text color. And for for evening horizon, it's the other way around. You could do the same for high contrast themes, and you could also do it for all 5 petals, and then you end up with a pretty large CSS. For this demo, this here is enough. And if we look closely, then this last petal has a color of white. Good thing it's white because petal 1 text color is sub-contrast text color, and that is white. If, again, we change the selected color, it's darkish. Let's have a look. And here, it's not black. It's the content contrast text color, which is what we want. It works in all themes. And now we have everything that was previously done in less or in JavaScript, just in CSS in the browser. I find that really appealing because it eliminates so much build steps and performance impact. We actually tested the performance impact of having many CSS custom properties, and there is no performance impact at all, which is nice. So much for the demo. Let's, for a short time, think about what will be next. This is a vision. Every application build, every control build, no matter if it's part of a UEFI distribution layer library or it's your own, it can now work in every theme. And in the future, we could even express the whole logic of a theme directly in CSS custom properties. At the moment, for example, SAP selected color is just a hex value. But in the future, it could also be a relative color based on SAP brand color, for example. And if you change the brand color, you change also the selected color, you also change the button emphasized background, you change everything directly in the browser. And if you have that, you can really implement something we would call scopes. Maybe you remember the theme SAP Belize we just deprecated, where we had sort of dark islands in otherwise light applications. And we had to come up with a lot of custom code in the theming engine for, mainly to implement those scopes 10 years ago, because 10 years ago there was no such thing like container queries or custom properties. Now there is, and from today's point of view, if you do everything I just told you, we could shut down the theming service because it's no longer needed. And with that we have made ourselves obsolete, which is also a bit nice. If you want to find out more, if you want to try out what I just did, we have a workshop later on where you can do exactly what I just did. That was just one part of the workshop. There are other parts for starting with a library that performs somehow like a library-less distribution build, and also for a library that uses the Parameters.get API. Workshop at 15:55 in the orange room right over there. And directly after lunch, we have an expert corner at 1325 in the export corner over there. We're happy to get in touch with you, answer your questions, talk about what problems you face with theming, where we can help you. We're happy to learn from you. And with that, and 4 minutes left, I want to thank you very much for listening, for attending, for having theming a topic in your work. And now go build something amazing and ask questions in the Q&A. Thank you very much.
I'm sure there must be some questions. Yes.
Normally you will maybe think about having to target themes that's not based on one theme ID, but maybe a base theme or even a color, light and dark. Is that have you thought about not taking the theme ID, but taking the base theme of the ID, so that when you create a custom theme, you will go to the base theme?
Yeah, that's actually how the SAP, that's because of that, the parameter is called SAP theme ID and not SAP theme ID. Because it always contains the name of the SAP theme the custom theme is based on. So that's exactly what we're doing. And if you write it like I did, then it works for custom themes as well.
In your code for switching from white to black, you entered the magic number 0.623.
Yeah.
What's the magic behind it?
Okay, so Lea Veru, as I already mentioned, manually tested or wrote a script that tested different thresholds when switching from light to dark and tested if the colors that come out fulfill WCHG 2.2 contrast requirements. And 0.623 is the highest number, the highest threshold you could come up with, where light colors stayed readable. More questions? We still have time.
If not, then I hope you will join them for their hands-on session this afternoon or say hello to them in the experts corner.
Yeah.
There's another question.
Great.
Maybe not part of the theming itself, but when you attach a style class to your file controls, it's not bindable. Is that something you can elaborate on?
That's nothing we have in our control from theming perspective. But if I remember correctly, I did a proof of concept where you bound it with, there was a hack. I read it on Stack Overflow, but I do not remember what the hack was. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks so much.
Tell me your name and I find it out and send it to you. Yeah. Great.
For a great presentation. Really enjoyed it. Up next in this room at 11 o'clock, we have seamless integration of web components in UI5, latest developments. And hopefully I'll see you then.
Thank you very much.